Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today on the International Save the Vaquita Day. We are one of about 20 to 25 events taking place around the world today to celebrate, to raise awareness, and to educate about the vaquita. I feel tremendously fortunate in that I had the distinct privilege of being able to see a vaquita in the wild, not just once, but on several occasions, and I want to share some of those experiences with you today. Now, I entitled today's talk, Hope for Vaquita, and I suspect that at some points in the talk you're going to think, why do we have hope for this species? But I think it's really important in conservation biology that we don't lose sight of the fact that sometimes we can get to very dire situations and we can succeed, we can come back. What I'm going to tell you about today is a story that we have watched unfold over the last few decades, and it does take us to a point where it can be really quite disheartening, but there are steps in progress and steps underway that will hopefully rescue this species. So with that, I would like to introduce you to the vaquita. The vaquita is the smallest porpoise on the planet, and porpoises themselves are fairly small. I'm about porpoise size. They're typically about 5 to 5.5 feet long, and the weight range really varies amongst the species, but for vaquita, they're about 100 to about 150 pounds, so they're pretty small creatures. They're found only in the Sea of Cortez, which is found in the upper Gulf of California. And when I first made this slide, the vaquita range was approximately 4,000 square kilometers, but it has been reduced to an area that is only about 24 by 12 square kilometers. And it is now the vaquita, the world's smallest porpoise, is the most endangered marine mammal in the world and possibly the most endangered mammal. Now, the vaquita, many people have never heard of, and in fact there are scientists that know very little about vaquita. The vaquita was discovered in the Sea of Cortez, Mexico, only in 1950. And the research and the studies that were done determined that by 1994, the species was declared endangered. So what could be going on? The population trajectory has taken a steady nosedive down, and unfortunately, that trend has continued to the data that would take us up to 2018, 2019. The decline is precipitous. So I'll give you a little bit of history about what's been going on in the upper Gulf of California. It is an incredibly rich area in terms of biodiversity. In fact, in 2005, it was declared a World Heritage Site because of its incredible diversity of over 170 species of seabird and more than 700 species of fish. And it's that fish diversity that has led to intense fishing. Since about the 1930s, the area has been fished quite intensively with both legal and illegal fisheries. There is a fish there that is about the same size as the vaquita, and this fish is called the tutuaba. And the tutuaba is a drumfish, and it is a fish that has a swim bladder, and the swim bladder is what enables the animal to maintain its buoyancy. The tutuaba fishery officially closed on August the 2nd, 1975, because the fish was moving towards extinction. It was being overfished. And what is the desire for the tutuaba? Well, this is really the crux of what's happening with vaquita. The fish is not consumed really that locally. It is the swim bladder that is driving the fisheries, particularly the illegal ones. And remember, any fishery for tutuaba since 1975, it's been illegal because Mexico banned it with an indefinite and permanent ban. The swim bladder is desired by some people in China, particularly in the Guangdong province, and it is used, the swim bladder is dried, it is then referred to as a maw, and it is used in a soup that's said to have restorative properties. And this swim bladder, this piece of this fish, is becoming incredibly valuable. But because the tutuaba and the vaquita live in the same area and they are about the same size, the nets that are set either legally or illegally for tutuaba catch vaquita. There is zero economic value to catching a vaquita. The animals swim into the net. The gill nets are designed to catch things. They're very good at what they do. The vaquita drowns silently when the net is pulled up. The totoaba is removed, the swim bladder is taken out, and the vaquita is thrown overboard. It is completely bycatch, it is incidental, it is accidental, but it is collateral damage on an ecological scale. The estimated bycatch rates between 1983 and 1993 were 58 vaquita per year. And those dried swim bladders, I had to update this because they are becoming more and more valuable. The dried swim bladders are now said to be more valuable than either cocaine or gold. And in fact, the dried swim bladders from Totoaba are now being referred to as the cocaine of the sea. So much so that it's alleged that Mexican cartels are getting involved in the illegal wildlife trade for the swim bladder, the buoyancy organ from a fish that lives in the upper Gulf of California. And you can see why. Between 20 to 80,000 US dollars per kilogram. That is what drives the ecological imbalance in the upper sea, or the upper Gulf of California. And as I mentioned, the destination is China. We know the source, we know how the animals are being caught. We actually now, because of some work that's been done by investigative agencies, we even know now who is catching the vaquita because they are catching the totoaba, and we know where it's going. It's going to China. And the mortality of these nets is indiscriminate. It catches large vaquita, it catches small vaquita, it catches moms with calves. And you can see here, the gentleman, Omar Vidal, who was with the World Wildlife Fund, he is holding a totoaba, and the vaquita was also in the net. So you can see how similar in size these two creatures are. The totoaba is also now endangered. The harvest of this animal in this unregulated manner has resulted in a second species sliding towards extinction. And the nets in the Sea of Cortez are everywhere. They are attached to derelict boats. They are filled with skeletons from not just vaquita and totoaba, but many other species of dolphin, seabird, sea turtle, sea lion, you name it, it's in those nets. And the carcasses line the shores. And the current population of vaquita, which back in 2005, when the United Nations determined it to be a World Heritage Site, the home of this small porpoise, was 300. Today, we are looking at less than 20. And this is the point of the talk where many people say to me, what is the point? If only there are 20, we should perhaps just give up. However, that's not my perspective. My perspective is we don't ever give up. We have to work for the animals that are still here. They are the survivors. They are the ones that have evaded the nets. And in fact, we did see, I was there in 2017, we saw vaquita with net marks on them. So some animals, very few, but some have escaped those nets. And Mexico has not sat by idly. Mexico has been proactive. Mexico has tried. The government, many branches within the government have worked, and there are some incredible people down there who are working to try and save vaquita. And in fact, the Committee for the International Recovery of Vaquita, which is known as CIRVA declared that the vaquita are in imminent danger of extinction, and that they strongly recommended that the government of Mexico enact emergency regulations and implement a full gill net ban throughout the zone where the vaquita live. And you can see on this figure here, that purple sort of polygon shape in the middle, that is the vaquita range, and then the gill net ban was to extend farther down. Mexico did this. They paid fishermen not to fish. They took those legal fishermen out of the water, resulting in the only fishermen in the water were the poachers. Mexico also supported an unprecedented recovery action throughout the whole process that has culminated in where we are today. They created the Upper Biosphere Reserve in 1993. For a time, the entire vaquita refuge was essentially free of entanglement gill nets and shrimp. They took out about 230 vessels out of the water that were engaged in fishing. They had 105 vessels at least that were involved in a gear replacement scheme. And 12 swim bladders were intercepted. The level of enforcement was increasing. And in 2015, a 2-year ban on gill nets in the range was implemented. And in 2017, there was a memorandum of understanding of a permanent gill net ban in the vaquita habitat. Because really, we know why these animals were dying. It's gill nets. It's a simple answer. They also banned night fishing so that anybody that was out there would be able to be seen during the daytime by enforcement officials. And the solution was to create a safe sanctuary. If we can make the vaquitas home safe for them, they will probably recover. And so Mexico supported an unprecedented conservation action, which I had the privilege of being a part of. And we had over 90 scientists go to Mexico in 2017 for the Vaquita Conservation and Protection and Recovery Action, known as Vaquita CPR. And we scoured the Sea of Cortez, looking for vaquita with handheld binoculars, and also what you see here on the screen, these are known as the big eyes. You can see for about 6 miles with those binoculars. They have to be mounted. They are incredible to look through. And we found vaquita. We saw them, and we saw them with calves. It was really enlightening. Our job was to try and be the very first people to try and capture a vaquita and move it to a safe sanctuary that Mexico had built. And the idea was, if we can't get the nets out of their range in time, maybe we can take them out of their range and then take a little extra time to finish cleaning up those nets. But unfortunately, the vaquitas are a little bit like a hummingbird. They really don't like being in captivity in an artificial setting, and they just simply don't do well. So this was tried. It was one of the last things that SERVA had recommended. We'd been through every other recommendation, and it failed. So that leaves only one solution. The only way to save vaquita is to give them safe sanctuary. And that means we have to get these nets out of their range, and we have to clean them up. And there's a wonderful program that is taking some of these nets that have been pulled out of the vaquita range and turning them into tennis shoes and flip-flops. It's called the Parlay Project, so you can Google that. And, if you want to help support the project, that's one of the ways to do so. And you know, as I said, when we were there, we saw vaquita, we've heard vaquita, because part of this project uses acoustic detection devices that are placed throughout the range of the vaquita, because they are so elusive and they are so small. They are very, very difficult to see, but they do echolocate. And so these acoustic detectors are out, and in fact, they just went out a few days ago and put out a whole new set trying to find out where the few remaining vaquita are. So the project is still going. And in 2018, the very first photo-identified vaquita with a calf was seen and photographed and named, and I'm very, very privileged to share the name, because the very first named vaquita was named Anna. Not to do with me, but I am so very pleased to share my name with that animal. So though we have less than 20, we think, and though we still have illegal fisheries, and though all of the efforts to pull the nets out of the range have not succeeded as we had hoped, the sun has not yet set on this species. There are things that we can do, but absolutely the time to act is now, and we have to do it for those surviving animals. We know they are still producing calves. There is going to be, as long as the weather allows, another expedition later this year to try and count and identify and photograph the remaining individuals. So the team that has been involved with vaquita conservation is not giving up. I am certainly not giving up, and I'm so grateful to all of you for being here, because part of the process is sharing this information. So we do need to help vaquita. SERVA, the International Committee for the Recovery of Vaquita, has given some very specific recommendations, and so I've taken these directly from the report, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's very simple. If we can pull those nets out, we can save vaquita. So we need to fully fund those efforts. And we need 24-hour surveillance monitoring within the range. And remember, this range is now shrunk to about 12 by 24 kilometers. It's very small, really, on the scale of animal distributions. But we need the monitoring, we need the surveillance, because the desire and the cartels and the illegal wildlife trade is still putting immense pressure on this region. And we need to take all necessary measures to protect the teams who are removing the nets. Because of the financial attraction to catching the Totoaba swim bladders, or to catching the Totoaba for their swim bladders, there have been some very unpleasant events directed towards those who are trying to remove the nets. And they need protection, absolutely. And the poachers need to know that we mean business. There have to be arrests and there have to be prosecutions. We have had some arrests, but we have had few prosecutions. And so this is a gaping hole in the vaquita conservation process. But there have been some very positive recent events, and I am very pleased to share these with you today. In March 2019, 11 people were prosecuted in China with 200 swim bladders. Remember, it's one swim bladder per fish. And that was an estimated $119 million US worth of value. Just last month, there was a car in Orange County that was speeding. And there happened to be an agent nearby who pulled the car over, and there was 2 Chinese men inside. And he thought, oh, they're acting a little bit suspicious. And they said they'd been clothes shopping, but they had some boxes in the back of the vehicle. So the agent thought, oh, perhaps this has got to do with drugs. So he got the dogs in, and turns out it was not drugs. It's more valuable than drugs. It was Totoaba swim bladders. And they had 132 swim bladders in the boxes of their car. They had just come up from Mexico, worth an estimated almost $4 million. And just 2 days ago, the United Nations, the IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and the branch of the UN, which is for Education, Science, and Community, included the Gulf of California on the list of World Heritage endangered. Now remember, back in 2005, this area was designated a World Heritage Site because of its intense and incredible biodiversity. Just 2 days ago, the imminent threat to that biodiversity from the fishing activities has now led to being listed as one of these sites where we are at risk as a global community of losing that incredible biodiversity. And it's the illegal fishing that is doing this. It is poaching, it is the illegal wildlife trade in animal parts, which is now one of the top 3 industries on this planet in terms of dollar value, up there with weapons, drugs, and animal parts. So we do need to help vaquita. And what can we do as people who are not in Mexico or perhaps not engaged in purchasing these illegal animal parts? We must commend Mexico for their efforts. It is the single largest conservation action in the history of this country. The very fact that they were able to pull all of the fishermen that were legal out of the water and pay them, especially with those of us who live near the ocean and think about southern resident killer whales and some of the controversy that's going on. If Mexico could do it, surely we can do it here as well. Please sign our petition at the Porpoise Conservation Society. We have over 180,000 signatures supporting vaquita. We have a table upstairs. Please stop by and sign, or if you forget or you're too busy, you can sign it online as well at porpoise.org. And when you go to the grocery store, you can help vaquita by simply buying sustainable seafood. And not only will you help vaquita, you will help our porpoises as well here in British Columbia, because there are only 7 species of porpoise on the planet, and we have 2 of them. We have the harbor porpoise and the Dall's porpoise, and we know next to nothing about these animals, and I would love to tell you about them, but we don't have time today. However, the Porpoise Conservation Society has got several research projects underway, and at porpoise.org, please visit us, and we can share our information with you. I had somebody at a grocery store urging me to buy Sea of Cortez prawns because, and I quote, they're the cleanest prawns on the planet. If anybody tells you that, don't believe them. We do not want to support an industry that is killing the vaquita. What we want to do is support industries that are being using gear that is vaquita friendly. And there is a movement now in Mexico to try. The gear has been developed, it needs to be tested, and we need to support Mexico in testing that. And in fact, the United States has got a ban on importing Mexican seafood right now because the bycatch rates of vaquita exceed what is allowed in the United States in a domestic fishery. And if you don't eat seafood, and you could always adopt a vaquita. Did I mention porpoise.org? Christmas is coming. You can symbolically adopt a vaquita because all of this work, although we are all volunteers and we do it all for free, the work that we do support does require funds. So if you are so inclined, please symbolically adopt a vaquita. But most importantly, please tell everybody you know about this species. They are so close to extinction, but we have not lost them yet. And which is why I have hope for vaquita, because of the incredible efforts of people, not just like myself, but around the world, who are working for a species that most of us will never ever get to see, but that doesn't diminish their value or their importance. And there are conservation success stories for people who say to me, oh, just give up. They're doomed to extinction. No, they're not. We know why they are sliding towards extinction. We can do something about it, and we've done it before with other species. I read on the World Wildlife Fund site that there are now over 1,000 mountain gorillas in the wild, and that's a 25% increase in just the last 2 decades. The eastern North Pacific gray whales, which come past our shores every year, they were declared extinct in the early 1900s. We shot almost all of them, but not all of them. And the population estimate back then, and no one was counting gray whales then, was somewhere between 10 and 100 animals. Well, what if it was 10? And now we have around 18,000 of them. So if we have less than 20 vaquitas, should we give up? I don't think so. I think we have hope for vaquitas still. Same story with humpback whales. I'm sure many of you are aware, humpback whales are increasing annually. They're in our waters, and they are now recolonizing historic habitats that they have not been in for decades, because we removed the primary threat and we let them recover in the wild. And their primary threat, like gray whales, was the whaling industry. Same for northern elephant seals. So rare, they were thought to be extinct. In fact, the Smithsonian Institution found the last few northern elephant seals and shot most of them, further reducing the population so that a museum would have a specimen. And yet these animals came back when we removed the threat. Remove the threat and do no harm, and the animals might just survive. And with that, I would just like to thank, because it's not just me working on vaquita, I have just a very small part to play in this conservation story. There are so many people out there, and these are just some of them. And I would like to thank all of you very much for your time and taking a little bit of your Saturday to come and learn about vaquita. Thank you so much.